Welcome to the drill. Sorry, it threw me off. Welcome to the drill, Pursuing NBCT Without a Rostered Classroom, with Krista and Sandy. I am LaTorea Brooks. I am in Huntsville City Schools, and I am school counseling. I will be monitoring the chat and helping the presenter answer any questions you may have. We want this to be engaging and informative. Even though we must all remain muted, please keep your camera on. We want to see you. Be sure to ask questions in the chat or unmute yourself if prompted by the presenters. We're recording the session so that you may view it later. I'm posting today's attendance form in the chat. Doing that right now. Please complete it to receive professional learning credit. You only have to complete it once for the whole day. So if you've already done it, you don't have to do it again. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my mouse. I'm also going to provide the link to register in PowerSchool for professional learning credit. Sorry, I'm having issues talking today. So without further ado, here's Krista and Sandy.
Hey guys, I'm Krista Dement, and I'm also a counselor, LaTorea, so that's exciting. I'm in Trustful City Schools. I'll go on, we already said this, so I'm gonna click on over to this next one. And then I will let Sandy introduce herself.
All right, hey everybody, I'm Sandy Brand. I am a library media specialist at Liberty Middle School up in Madison City.
Awesome. So we know the challenges of trying to pursue national board when you don't have a rostered classroom. So hopefully you'll be able to just get some ideas, maybe some takeaways, you know, just kind of, you know, spark some new things, ways that you can get your hands on some kiddos or ways to do it. I know for myself, I made it much harder. So I've been kind of scrolling through the chat. It looks like we have a really good diverse group, different people from different backgrounds. You know, we've got specialists and counselors and coordinators. I see lots of different people. That's awesome. Hopefully, no matter what area you're in, we can, you know, give you some ideas, even different people we've worked with or talked to for that. So we'll jump in. I kind of come from a crazy journey that, sorry, I silenced everything but my watch, of course. I come from a crazy journey when I decided to do national boards. It was kind of from my best friend's traumatic experience, and we jumped in and did this together. So long story, won't get into that, but I originally said, hey, you should do this. Then she pulled me in kicking and screaming. It's funny because when I looked at our notes from doing this last year, I talked about what a crazy school year it had been, that one prior before. And like, that doesn't even, that sounds crazy to think that 3 years ago, I thought that was a crazy school year. I had no idea what was in store, right? So that for me, I got, and I'll talk about this in a few minutes, but I got really hung up, you know, really for all of the fall that I jumped in on this. I got super hung up on component 4. I'm a big planner. I'm a list maker. I love ideas, but I didn't really get started on anything until January. Like I just kept spinning my wheels. And so I don't recommend doing what I did. But it worked. It was fine. But I just had a really hard time wrapping my head around how I was going to do some of these things that were for teachers when I wasn't teaching. And so that was where I got really stuck. And I was a teacher before, so it wasn't that. I was really struggling. So Sandy, I'll let you go next.
All right, and there are some similarities between Krista and myself. One of my really, really good friends at school is a counselor. And so she came to me in September. She was like, hey, I think that we should do this. And I'm like, hey, I think you're crazy. And she's like, no, it'll be fun if we do it together. It'll make it easier, you know. I should have turned and ran, but you know, but we did. And I will say it helped, you know, we've, in all the sessions I've been in today, we've talked a lot about that support network and through the state and through your district and through your school. And it was so valuable to have a friend / coworker in my school to do it with. But so I spent September and October kind of familiarizing myself with all of the components, like Krista. I did a lot of planning. I can plan the heck out of anything, you know, so, but you know how you get that sense of, or that feeling of paralysis when there's just so much, you really don't know where to start. And so I would start with forms, you know, oh, this form needs me to put school demographic information. I can do that today. I have that information. And so I would start doing little things, you know, that had to be done as part of the process, and move me forward just a little bit. And so I found that helped me kind of get over that hump. The component I hated the worst was component 3. And I think that's because sometimes being a special, you're not with necessarily classes of students all day, every day, day in, day out. And so the idea of being videoed was very uncomfortable for me. And it really was the one that almost did me in for the whole process. But I made it through. I did all 4 components in 1 year. It's probably not for everybody to do it that way, but it worked for me. I'm glad I did it that way, and just got it done.
I agree with what Sandy said. I mean, I think we both mentioned this. Having a support system is everything. I mean, I think if you can find someone, you know, if you have a buddy to go along with you, it's phenomenal because you can kind of help push each other and, you know, hey, have you looked at this? Have you done this? Even though it was my best friend and she was doing it in she was doing ELA, we still had enough similarities with us, especially both not having a classroom because she was at the Board of Education. We were really able to lean on each other a lot and push each other. So the times that many times I want to say, why am I doing this? This is crazy. She was able to keep me in there. And if you can get in a mentor group, that is the best. I don't know what I would have done. I always tell everyone, without Dr. Shields, without the group at Gardendale First Baptist, I mean, they were phenomenal. And honestly, there were no other counselors going through. So I was always kind of by myself. I'm sure Sandy may have experienced some of that too. There's not as many of us. And so, you know, I just kind of went, sometimes I would work alone, but it was just nice to be there around people who were doing the same thing. And I could ask, even if it was asking the math person or asking someone from, you know, a different area, they could still hop in and help me. So it's just so good to find a way to get plugged in with a group for sure. So we can go through each component and kind of share what we did and worked for us, and kind of break it down. I know I will start getting the ibby jibbies as we get towards component 4, because that's the one that gave me the most stress. So it's funny to hear Sandy say that. I was fine with the video. So we'll go through each one, starting with, of course, component 2. So I know everybody, not everybody, but most people I talk to say, oh, component 2 is a breeze. Component 2 compared to 3 and 4 is easy peasy. And I felt that was the same thing for me. You know, trying to really show ways that I've differentiated with a group. For me in counseling, we do small groups all the time. I had several small groups actually going at the time of when I chose this particular group. And it just kind of fell into place. They weren't really the group that I was going to use. And then one day it just clicked. This is the group of girls that I need to be working with as far as my, you know, my component 2. We were doing healthy relationships. It was some of my frequent flyers. Anybody that's in counseling, you know about your frequent flyers. And I got to see those babies a whole bunch. And so it was a great little group of kids, because I think out of the 12 girls that I had in there, 5 of them had IEPs. And so and then one had a GEP, and then one was also, or the one with the GEP also was vision impaired. And so it really lent itself to being like, hey, I'm doing a lot of differentiation already with this group. This is exactly the group that I need to focus on for component 2. So, you know, it was for that particular component, that was pretty easy, like I said, because I was already working with this group of girls. I had already been keeping up with a ton of data, like you know, trips to the counseling office, teacher referrals regarding some of these girls. And so it made it very easy. It's not anything I had to go out and, I guess, create. It was kind of there for me. I'll let you have it, Sandy.
Okay. So what I did was I worked with a 6th grade social studies class, and their teacher is an NBCT already, but they were getting ready to do a unit that had a research component to it. So she and I collaborated on this unit together that would involve research. And so because it was a social studies class, there was not like an honors and a reg and all that. So there was a very wide variety of students and student needs in this class. What was really interesting for me was that I had to pick 2 students that I worked with to show their work samples in my component. And so one of them was a student that he was extremely academically low. And that's what I think we mostly think about when we think about differentiation. Our first thought always goes to the ones that need more support, you know, maybe our tier 3 kiddos. But for my other student, I picked a girl who was extremely academically gifted. However, she had serious social and emotional struggles where she had, oh my gosh, it's slipped my mind, the official diagnosis, but basically she had selective mutism. My dogs, I guess, saw a butterfly go by. So she literally would not talk to anybody at all. She wouldn't talk to her peers. She wouldn't talk to her teachers, nothing. And you had to really learn how to work with her and read her body language and how to communicate with her so that she didn't feel threatened. Because as soon as she did, she would shut down. And even though she was academically gifted, she wouldn't do the work. She was done. And so learning how to work with her needs, it really provided a lot of really interesting work samples because she needed help. She needed differentiation just as much as my lower kiddos did. And so it was really interesting for me to be able to do that.
Any questions on component 2? I mean, we'll definitely do a Q&A session at the end, I think. Is there anybody right now? All right. Component 3, I'm just gonna real fast go ahead down there at the bottom. I have discussed large group did not work for me. I've already said, I'm a huge planner. I mean, as soon as I did finally go, okay, fine, I'll do it. You know, I'll jump in. I was like, this component 3 is going to be a breeze. Like, I love to teach. I love to get in with the kids. I planned this amazing unit. I mean, it was so fabulous. I went into the teacher who had the best classroom management. So I knew that those babies were going to be awesome for me, because we all know that's a stressor when we're videoing for Comp 3. It's not important. They know we need real life. But at the same time, I was like, I need kids who are going to do what I'm asking, you know, when I'm up teaching and doing these activities. I had all of the ingredients for the perfect Comp 3 video, except I did not know the kids. I knew them. I knew their names. I knew some stuff about some of them. But in this particular class that I borrowed, I didn't really know them with heart, which we all know as counselors, that's really important. I needed to know more than who, you know, if they come from a 1-parent or 2-parent home. I needed to know more than those basic things. And so when I really sat down, and they were great on video, they did all the things. But when I really sat down to write about it, I just wasn't, like, I struggled. I did not, I didn't feel passionate is really the only thing I can really say about it. It was like, it was just very, So went back to the drawing board because I put a lot of time and effort into it. So that was that was a hard thing for me to do, because I felt like I've got this great video. I've got all the stuff. I just did not feel like I could write it in a way that really expressed who I was as a counselor and really be able to showcase like all the things that I'm doing really all over the rest of the school every day as a counselor. And I mean, I feel like we all probably come through that in our, you know, no matter what your role is at some point. So I went back to the drawing board. I'll kind of skip down to the bottom of that slide where I said same students from component 2. I went back in and I had practiced some videoing with them. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll go video that group. So I did. I went in and I videoed that small group, and we did a lesson on empathy. It was not hands down the best lesson. It was not, you know, there were parts where you couldn't hear the kids, but I felt like I could really write about that group and I could answer all of the commentary questions so much better because I had so much, again, more passion behind my why and how I was doing it and all of that. And so that's what I did with counseling. You can do an individual small group or a large group, but you can't do two of the same. So they were my small group. And then I did an individual video with one of my students who was working on some different, her particular thing was test anxiety. But I had several kids that I actually used in component 4 as well that were my group of kids that I was working on for different things with anxiety, which we know is huge with all of our kids across all age groups right now. And so I, knew this child, reached out to the mom, hey, can we, will you sign this consent form? I would like to start videoing our sessions. And again, it was very basic. There was no, bells and whistles or anything fabulous. But again, I felt like it really showcased what I do on the day-to-day, as far as being a school counselor. It's very real. And again, because it was very real, there was more behind it. Again, I could be a little bit more passionate about why it was important for this particular child and creating a plan to work on her test anxiety. So that's what our video was. I mean, it's kind of boring actually, but I had a lot to write and to say about that. So I guess my big takeaway from component 3 is in the beginning was so focused on the video and the lesson and the perfection of what was going to be seen in that 15 minutes or less that I felt like I was losing focus of the why in my writing. And so once I kind of came back around to that, it all came together beautifully.
And I'm so glad you said that, because I think that's why component 3 gave me so much heartache. Is because I thought I've got to have the perfect video. I've got to have the perfect video. And it was only after I kind of came through on the other side that I realized that, number one, the perfect video doesn't exist. Or, maybe if it does exist, then everybody thinks, oh, well, that's not really real, because we work with kids. All right. We live life, things are going to happen. And as with component 2 and as with component 4, it's about that written commentary. That video or those 2 videos are just additional pieces of evidence. So you're going to, in your commentary, you're going to say, this is what I did. This is why I did it. This is the impact it had on these students. And the video is my evidence. And I wish I had been able to see that when I was in the middle of it. I think that would have kind of taken the stress off a little bit. But like Krista, I had the option to do individual, whole group, or small group. And I had to pick 2. And so I did small group and whole group. My whole group, and with every teacher I worked with, because not having a rostered class, you have to collaborate with the classroom for every component. And so it was really important that for this, that I worked with teachers that I already had extremely good working relationships with. We already collaborate regularly. We collaborate and work well together. So I did an 8th grade no, this one was not honors, an 8th grade English language arts lesson. I felt so good about it. I mean, I was confident about it, and got up that morning and we were on a 2-hour delay because of weather. So my class was supposed to start at 8:15. We were not even going to get to school until 10:15. And all of our class times were being cut in half. So I went ahead, I videoed anyway. It turned out well, but just to know that things are going to happen, you know. So you roll with it as best you can, and always have plans for multiple videos. If you think you're going to do a one and done, you're likely to burn yourself. So just a little word to the wise there. For my small group, I worked with a group of 6th grade honors language arts kids that we had done whole group lessons, but they were advanced enough that they needed a little bit more enrichment. And so I would pull them in and we would have small group lessons. And it was so much fun. They were so engaged with me, with the material, with each other. But again, speaking to the perfection part, again, these are humans. They're 6th graders. And I had one little girl, Precious, but she had a pile of pencils and she would twirl the pencil in her hair. And then she would pick up another pencil and she would twirl another section of her hair. And by the time we got done, her head had pencils sticking out all over it. Okay. But you know what? The content, the academic content of it was beautiful. And her pencils gave me something else to write about. So even though it was not what somebody might term perfect, it worked fine. And it gave me exactly what I needed to be able to write about.
That's so funny. Like that, you're right. Sometimes it's those little moments that give you something additional to go a little deeper in what you know about those kids. I think, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I think one way that we're different from teachers, and one thing when I'm talking to a teacher about national boards, I'm like, just video yourself all the time. Just get used to it. Then it makes it no big deal for the kids. And you can see what works and what doesn't. We don't have that luxury. So it's kind of like every time you're up to bat, you need to hit a home run, kind of a deal. And so we don't have those opportunities to practice or whatever. So I definitely, that's a great piece of advice. Don't count on that one video because it's Alabama and we're going to be delayed for weather or, some sort of other emergency. And so I agree with that. That's that video yourself as many times as you can in those situations. I feel like my heart starts to pound when I just see component 4. I'm not kidding. It did me in. It turned out fine. I mean, obviously it worked, but I had such a hard time wrapping my head around component 4. Being with Dr. Shields and she being the guru that she is, and she's so smart, she told us to start with 4 because it's the hardest. So I appreciated that. But it's so funny to go back and look at my notes and stuff from when I first started reading the standards, reading all about, component 4. I had so many fabulous ideas, but again, once I got into the nitty gritty, once I got into looking at truly, how would I assess this? How is this going to work with assessment or whatever? I couldn't make it work. And I was also trying to make something that wasn't really that hard. I was making it so much harder. And I guess the assessment piece is the one that I can give you the best example on, because that's hard. That assessment piece is just, I kept trying to literally think of it in terms of when I taught, and I taught psychology. So it wasn't like I was teaching a skill, I was teaching ideas. And so when I assessed, it was pretty easy. And so I was trying to take and go, well, what would I do with kids versus counseling? And I would come up with ideas, but anyways, I just kept going in circles. And again, when it really came back to what I did, it was so simple. It was right in front of me the whole time. So again, as I mentioned, I think I had 4 kids. I have to go back and look at the number, but I was doing the same thing with these 4 kids. It was some lessons on anxiety. I did it individually, the same information, but I did it individually because these were kids who, even just to work in a group, it would not have worked for them. I collected data every time I met with them. Sometimes my assessment was as simple as, okay, show me one of the breathing techniques that you learned today. It's so simple. It's stuff I do all the time, but I just didn't realize it could be that simple for component 4. So that was the group I used. Again, like I said, I had already, when I started this process, I was working with 2. I added 2 more in. I think by the time I was at the end of this whole process, I was doing some other kids, but I used that core group of 4 for my data. And so, it worked. And again, it was so simple. And if there's any counselors out there who want to ask me about that later, I can get into how it was just really so simple. My professional need kind of tied in with my anxiety group, and then part of it tied in with my student need. It doesn't have to, but mine kind of flowed. It worked that way in the end. I was going through ASCA, or I was going through ASCA at the time to do the mental health specialist designation. And then also tying in with the student need, I went to the National Peer Helper Conference. We had seen just here, based on the data that we had coming from our needs assessments and different data from how many 6th graders were constantly signing in to see us, we came up with it's just our peer helpers. We call them MUSH mentors here. We're the Huskies. And so that was my student need, was us creating this peer group, and it all just kind of flowed. Again, it was all stuff that I didn't go make up or create because I was doing component 4. I had to really just sit back and go, oh, I'm already doing this, and this would work. I've got data, so that would be my biggest suggestion, is really looking at what you already do, no matter, whether you're at the Board of Education or, a different role in the school. What are you already doing that lends itself to these components? Because you probably are doing those things. And it just, like I said, I was trying to glitter it up and make it pretty and create something grand when it was right there all along, and it worked.
I agree with that. And so, there's no component 4 is a bear. Now I will say it was my favorite, but it was a bear. And it's really frustrating when you think you spend all of this time on this huge component that you can barely wrap your brain around, and it's worth like the least amount, when they do the scoring. But anyway, what I had to do on component 4 was really say, okay, this is like a huge component that consists of 3 subcomponents. All right, we've got our assessment piece, we've got our professional need piece, and we have our student need piece, and kind of break those apart and tackle them individually. And so for the assessment, it's kind of like Krista. I'm like, assessment, that scares me to death. Just in my daily library media life, even with classes and things like that, I don't give tests. I don't, and that was when my brain was like, I don't know how to do assessment. Well, yeah, I do, because, it doesn't matter what you teach, you do formative assessment, even if you're doing one-on-one, you're checking for understanding and things like that. And so once I kind of talked myself down from that ledge, it was a little bit easier to move on. But our ELL teacher had come to me, and she wanted me to work with her on a research project with her ELL kids. And these were the the level one, when they walked into our door, they spoke very little to no English at all. So it was a classroom of 7 kids. They were all 6th graders. And in this group of 7 kids, there were 5 different languages that were spoken. And I had the most fun working with these kids. I mean, they were so incredible. They just soaked it all up and they loved it. I mean, they loved learning, you know, just basic things. I had them because they were all from different countries, do a research project. They all did the same type of research project, but they did it on their country. And they were so proud to be able to present in English, because that was the collaborative part of the rubric with their teacher, was that there were certain things that they had to be able to say in English. And so it was beautiful the way that it turned out. But like for their self-assessment, I'm like, how can I have a student who barely speaks English do a self-assessment? I mean, that's a hard concept sometimes to even explain. It's like, okay, well, I need emojis, you know, just pictures that they could circle, you know, or something like that. So it's like Krista was saying, it didn't have to be anything, you know, big and difficult. It could be just something very simple that you probably have already used before. And so as I worked with them, it really got a hold of me how difficult it must be to come into a school that speaks a completely different language than you do. And we have students, and I'm sure all of y'all do, where they might land in the United States and 2 or 3 days later, they're in our building, they're students in our school, you know, and I just cannot imagine what that must be like. And so I thought, how do they communicate with their teacher that they need to go to the bathroom, or, you know, they need a pencil or something like that? And I thought, how does that even work? And so I thought, well, that's a real student need, is to figure out a way to help these students be able to communicate on a very basic level when they walk in our door. And so I got to think, well, you know, that kind of flips the other way too, because our teachers can't communicate with them. And so it just so happened I was able to tie it all together. As Krista mentioned, they don't have to be related at all. Mine did. But I did a survey of every adult in my building, and I gave them like 10 words in Spanish and 10 words in Arabic and 10 words in Japanese, all that. And I just gave it to them and said, what does this mean in English? And they would just look at me like, I'm like, okay, so this is how this student feels, you know, and provided really good data for me to use. But I think that if you're able to just break those apart mentally, that component down into those 3 sections, and realize they don't have to all fit together. And also the thing I liked about the student need and the professional need is that those weren't specific to library media. I was able to really kind of think outside the box. What does my school need? What do my kids need? What do my teachers need? What does my district need that we don't have? You know, that by working on this, that I might be able to provide something that will support, you know, students and teachers all across the district.
I love that. That's awesome. So that's, you know, really, we know that this is probably, you know, you guys may have stuff that you can share with each other, or ask Sandy or ask myself, either one, but really just want to open it up and let you guys ask anything that you want to. If you have any thoughts or ideas, we definitely can try to help out as much as possible.
I have a question. Mine is, being a math coach, this is my 2nd year being a math coach, and I've been a 3rd grade teacher for about 15 years. I'm a math coach for 2 schools. And I was wrestling with the generalists and trying to see if I could do the 5th grade math, since you do have 11-year-olds in there that probably, a class would probably have 51% that's math. I guess my concern is, if I can't do math, which I'm into math coaching, and I do the generalists, how hard would that be if I have to put all the subjects in there?
Ooh, I'm not really sure about that. I don't know if anyone else wants to speak up to that piece. You know, I know with you being a math coach, the good thing is you're with kids a lot. So that's probably very helpful and makes it easy. I don't know how much that would change if you went to generalist. I don't know. Is anybody on here want to jump in on that question?
I have a friend that's similar, her situation's similar, and she's doing generalist. And one of hers, because she's the reading coach is what she is. So one of her lessons is ELA, and she's doing, like for component 2, she was doing a writing piece because it has to be, she has to do 2 separate things on component 3, if I'm not mistaken, but she was able to do writing, which fit right into what she was doing. And she's got to teach one lesson that's outside of the box. So she's doing a science lesson, but she's also bringing writing in. She's doing steps in something, I'm not sure, but she just borrowed a science class. But she said component 1 for her was much easier. If that's, I don't know if you want to say it's easier. She felt it was easier to do generalist personally because she had 15 years of teaching grade 5, all the subjects. So for her, component 1 was an easier thing to tackle than to think about having to do only math. That was just her personal take on it. But it was easy for her. I'm not going to say it's easy, but she has a plan. We're both doing ours this year, but she has a plan for how she's going to meet that other part of that component by doing generalist. I don't know if that helped or not, but or if that's what you were looking for, but.
So maybe because she's taught the elementary grades, probably taught all of those subjects, the generalist test in the long run may be easier than doing the math component 1 test. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
That's my friend's opinion. That was what she felt. And she was very comfortable with doing a science lesson because she taught grade 5 self-contained for so many years. So she thinks it's going to be easy for her to just borrow a class and do that science part of it, because it's not like her whole of anything. I think she has to do one lesson that she says is going to be kind of outside the box.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Now I'm not sure. Personally, I don't really know. I just know that's the discussion that we've had. I don't know if that helped.
And I'm gonna turn off screen share real quick so y'all can see each other's faces too. There we go. Okay, sorry. Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts? Have you done anything that really worked as far as borrowing kids? Patricia, do you have a question? Oh, we can't hear you, Patricia.
If I unplug the headphones, now can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. We had lawn mowing and then we had rainstorm. It was just easier with headphones before. With groups, I'm a reading interventionist. So I have several groups a day with anywhere between 5-6 students. So for the group in component 4, I could just take one of those groups, correct? Mm-hmm. Like I wouldn't take only the students from one rostered class, because usually you have like 3 or 4 kids from different second grade groups, or, you know, depending on their need, it could be some first and second graders.
Mm-hmm. My understanding is, someone else may want to jump in, is that yes, you can, kids with a similar need. I would definitely always defer back to your area, though that's those standards and the requirements and whatnot, just to be sure. But my understanding was, yes, if there's those group of students that you're working on with that similar need. Okay.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand, because I've got it in front of me, and it just says, if you work with a number of students who share similar characteristics, but you work with them separately, these students may constitute your group.
Right, right. So even if you work with these kids when you're working with all second graders, but then you're pulling them because there's a specific need, when you pull them, they are your group or can be your group.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Hey, that was kind of my question too. I'm a reading coach, and we can only pull one group of kids because of the way the Literacy Act is written. So I just wanted to make sure, because mainly we push in and we plan with the teachers and we co-teach and we model lessons and everything like that. But we can have one group of kids that we pull. So I was just making sure I wouldn't have to do the whole roster from a teacher's class, or if I can do my one group.
And Sandy, you can jump in here as well, but my understanding is that is correct. So we use the word roster, and I guess that means like we're not their official teacher. But yeah, any kids that you're pulling in like that, of course, always defer to your, you know, what the requirements are on your particular area. But yes, I think that would be similar to what Patricia was asking. I think that you would be fine pulling those in.
And I think that's correct. And just to reiterate what you said, always, always, always just check with your guidelines, and because they're really thorough about stating what that means, you know, what that for each individual certificate area. And if you're ever unclear, you can always call them and they will clarify for you. But I think that that is correct.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? I was looking at the comments. Has anybody done anything that really worked with you not having that group of kids that are just yours? It's quiet.
I was just going to say, when I was doing my I just worked with one grade level when I was doing my components. I'm a school counselor, so the year I was doing my components, I did all of mine in 1 year. And so I just happened to, that year, the 4th grade that year, I had worked with them since, sorry, my light keeps going off because I'm not moving. I had worked with them since they had been in 2nd grade. So I knew those kids really well. And I worked with those 4th grade teachers a lot, and I had a good relationship with them. So it just was a perfect storm of like, I worked with those teachers really well, and I worked with those kids since they had been in 2nd grade, since I had started working at that school. So it was just, you know, if you work really well with a set of teachers, or you work really well with a set of kids, you know, and they're not, you know, your kids, that's one good way of working with a set of kids, or working with kids when you don't have your own kids. It's just either working with a set of teachers that you know really well, or working with kids that you've kind of worked with over and over again. So that worked really well with me.
That's awesome that you had that 2 years of prior knowledge too going into that. We know as counselors, that's so important. Let's see, I'm looking at a comment, planning to go to the alternative school. Yeah, I love that, going into and pulling some kids for those individual and small group sessions. I think that's awesome. And there's obviously going to be a need there. I mean, it would not be hard to establish any data or showing a need. So just be going in and doing that. That's awesome, Megan.
I think this year, unfortunately, is going to be rich in students who need that extra intervention or that extra counseling, and across the board. So, so like I said, that's unfortunate that that's happened. But I think that if you're writing this year for national boards, I think that there's going to be a wealth of students out there that need the help.
Absolutely. Well, I will share, I'm going to screen share one more time real quick so that you guys, and of course the slides are in the website, sorry. Go there really quick and share. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not what I meant to share. Do y'all see the Q&A? All right, okay, sorry. There's our contact info for Sandy and myself. And so anytime, I mean, I'll try to answer any question, but certainly with our counselors out there, Sandy, I know she's shaking her head. Yeah. I mean, I will be happy. And if I don't know the answer, I can reach out to someone who's either in your area or connect you, or I'm constantly calling Dr. Shields. Hey, I'm trying to help this person, or they have this question. So really ask away. I can say that my journey going through me being able to reach out to people, either counselors who had gone through prior to when I did. I told you I was by myself in the mentor group. There was never another counselor, but just being able to reach out to people who had done it. I literally got on the national board website and like found people from my area, you know, right here around Birmingham that were nationally board certified counselors. And I emailed them. I'm like, hey, my name's Krista. I'm going through, I'm about to attempt this. So I definitely think the more people that you just kind of have in your, you know, little network that you can reach out to, the better. But I'm always willing to try. If I don't know the answer, I'll try to help you find it and or connect you with someone who can. So Sandy.
That's so funny, Krista, because I mentioned that in one of my earlier sessions was I would go to that directory on the National Board website, you know, and pull up Alabama and library media. And I felt like a salesman. I was like cold calling people, you know, but I mean, I would email people because sometimes a lot of national board, you know, just having anybody in any certificate area, it's extremely helpful. But sometimes you just need that person, you know, who's in the same certificate area that you're in. And so I would just randomly email complete strangers. And I will say, I never had anybody that did not email me back. And everybody was always so helpful. And I think that's one of the most amazing things about this process is that once you've come out on the other side, you're so grateful for the support that you were given that you just want to pay it forward. And so I really encourage you to go, you know, email us or you go to that directory and find somebody in your certificate area and reach out to them.
Absolutely. Definitely. Well, if you guys don't have any other questions, I think this is it. LaTorea, do you need to say or do anything as we wrap up?
I don't think so. No, I think so.
Well, thank you guys.